So, thank you all for coming along. I am delighted that we are joined by Sascha Grierson this evening and Colleen McCulloch. So, Sascha works for SAC and she is principal consultant. She heads up a team of farm business analysts and economists. But she also has over 24 years, although she doesn't look it, 24 years experience as an organic farming. So lots of experience there. And we're also joined by Colleen McCulloch. So Colleen is the senior farming and land use program manager for the Soil Association, so one of the certifying bodies. So we have two excellent speakers for you this evening and a wealth of knowledge. Okay, so I shall hand over to Sascha. And please just remember, if you want to put a question in the chat, I'll interrupt Sascha or put your hand up and um, we can just stop and ask anything at any time.
That's great, Siobhan. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'm going to do a fairly short presentation. We're trying to leave plenty of time for conversation at the end because you'll all have your own questions and reasons. I have prepared something which some of you may find that it isn't quite what you're looking for, but we'll get into it. Um, so I'll just start by sharing, and we'll get through. Tell you what we're going to talk about this evening. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, great. I'll just get myself
Yeah.
back so I can see all of you. Right, that's great. Okay, so what are we going to cover in my presentation just here? We're going to do a little bit about the why organic, and I think that talks to some of you what you want, why organic, why do it? A little bit about what it means, what the realities of it are. Going to be quite simple, light touch on that. And then there's a little bit about what you want to do. And then we'll do a little bit about the how, the EHO stuff, which some of you may already have covered already if you're already growing and selling to people. I'm going to do a little bit about budgeting because those of you who are doing it know that it's a lot of hard work, and that's fine. And you may not be at that sort of commercial stage. You may be more at the kind of thinking about commercial stage. Bit about market research, and then and how you find customers, and then some top tips to make it work. So, come on, presentation, do your thing. Right. So, why go organic? Lots of people start any little enterprise or any farm business enterprise, and guilty as charged with deciding what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And actually, sometimes we don't really stop to think about why we're going to do a thing. This picture comes from a chap called Simon Sinek, and you can go and look him up on YouTube, and he's giving TED Talks to, millions of people and all of that, and talking about corporate global brands. But actually, if you're doing something to sell to somebody else, it's worth actually giving this some thought. Why? Why think about your why? Well, it'll inform your scale of operation, what you do and how, and then also your business structure. Are you doing it as a local food cooperative? Are you going with people contributing their labor and getting paid in vegetables, or are you going to do it as a kind of 100 veg boxes a week delivering all over the Highlands, that kind of thing, or all over Shetland or whatever? But very importantly, it will inform your why, will inform your messaging for your customers and what it is you actually say to them, and the fact that how you sell and market your product and any social media and web activity that you have to sell the product that you grow. Why do I think about that first? I think because in my experience, um, I saw a lot of businesses that didn't focus on what they were going to sell and why they were doing a thing, and they would come and go out of the marketplace. And we were very clear about what we were doing and why we were doing the thing that we were doing, and it really helped us keep the faith and keep going. So, um, Yeah, so how do you do a why? You practice on friends and family and your network, and you get them to challenge your thinking, and that's not easy. And best done over a bottle of wine around a kitchen table, with some food in front of you, preferably some nice organic food. But they will throw curveballs into your thinking, and that's a good thing before you go and spend a lot of money, or while you're doing a thing and you're kind of going, I'm not quite sure how this is working. So, what does organic mean in practice? Well, it's a whole system approach to farming and growing, and that means you're farming with very low input. I used to say in presentations when I was giving them as an organic farmer that you're farming largely with sunlight, nutrients, and dung and compost that you're putting back into the soil, and also using clover. And that kind of approach to look after your soil. It's very restrictive on chemical inputs. So you can't reach for the bag to solve your weed problem. You have to actually do it usually mechanically. Those of you who are growing already will have developed your own solutions. Um, but importantly, in the horticultural space, is a very restricted use of peat, because of the environmental degradation around harvesting peat in composts. Very importantly, the benefits that organic growing give you, and I'm just really talking to the couple of people who were, I think one person asked that question, is that organic gives you a framework to grow produce in. So it gives you a set of standards. It kind of gives you a little bit about how you do it, to organic standards. And very importantly, it gives you a legal standard. Um, Organic is a protected kind of word. It has legal boundaries around it, and you can't go and use it without having a license to use the word, from licensing bodies. And Colleen is here representing one of them. What does that process do? In the marketplace, it acts like a badge of trust for your customers. And if you're on Noida, I've been to Noida, everyone in the community will probably be able to see what you're doing. So they'll know if you're reaching for the handy bag of nitrogen fertilizer to boost your yield. So, but lots of other people aren't in that situation where your customers can walk past you and have a little nosy around your polytunnels. Um, so organic will act as a badge of trust. And also it gives you access to consumers who are, from my experience, are very motivated, are very loyal, and they come from a broad church. They're not all wealthy people who can afford it. They're a broad church, but they are loyal to the concepts and the ideas of organic. Also, in the wider marketplace, if you're going to grow for a supermarket, organic is again that badge of trust and specialist of specialist production. The I've attached a link in this presentation here to part one in this series, which is all about growing. If any of you weren't in part one, and you will, I think, Siobhan, I'm correct in saying you'll get the presentation, so you'll be able to use these links. There's a
Yes.
very good part one there with a soil scientist, Audrey Littrick, who also is a veg grower, and what she doesn't know about soil isn't really worth knowing, and she's very passionate about it. And she that was a really good webinar. I watched it myself. So there's a link there if you want to know more about the actual growing. So how are you going to do it? The 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 how, I'm going to sort of assume from here onwards that people are looking to run a commercial enterprise. The environmental health thing is generic, whether you're organically certified or not. And with apologies to those people who've already ticked all these environmental health boxes and know all this stuff, for those people who don't, this is the kind of thing you need to think about. Um, so how are you going to do it? What's your plan? Are you going to grow to sell direct, to your local community? If you are, you may not have to register as a food business. Um, if you're selling to from the farm gate, then if you're just selling from the farm gate, then you won't have to register as a food business. If you're selling um, regular weekly dispatches of veg boxes, you know, across 3 counties or across the whole Shetland archipelago, then you may well need to register as a food business. So 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 that comes down to the definition of what is local as well. Are you selling direct to customers? Are you selling on to the another farm shop or four or five farm shops, and also, and then they're selling it on to other people? That will have an impact on what legislation you need to comply with, and also the level of detail that you need to give to your local authority, environmental health office. Again, I've attached two links here from Food Standards Scotland that are really helpful. This first one here talks about food hygiene regulations for direct supply. Go to page 7. There's a decision tree, and just work through the decision tree. And likely most of the people on this call will not have to register. Just think, but some of you may have to. It will tell you that you need to comply with a bunch of legislation, and you know, um, that requires just a little bit of interpretation. Document is short, it's only 9 pages, which is astonishingly brief from Food Standards Scotland. And then this other one, resource, is quite useful, um, where again it just gives you a checklist of thing. It actually, they've worked hard to make it easy for people to understand what they need to do and when they need to do it. So those two links I have found useful. Um, Environmental health, they are there to support you and they want you to succeed, but they will be concerned about whether you're telling consumers the wrong thing, as in you're selling product with a label on it that isn't a kilo of carrots or whatever it might be. Um, and they are also so get them involved. Tell them what you're going to do. They're very busy people. They have a big remit. Um, they may not have much time, but if you're selling direct to people and you're charging money and you're doing it regularly and you're registered as a food business, sooner or later they're going to get round to you. They're going to want to come and see you. General rules in processing produce, and many of you will know this, is to work from dirty to clean. That's just good practice. If you think about what you do at home to keep yourself healthy, you know, gold plate it for food production. That's what I'm trying to say. So yes, develop the positive relationship with your environmental health office. They can be really helpful. So the next bit is about inspections, just very briefly. If you are registered, there will be 2 inspections, food safety and food standards. And food safety is about dirty to clean principles in your processing area, and also any refrigeration you might have in your system. Only really relevant if you're looking after meat. And eggs do have a temperature, I think it's 20 degrees on it, but we're not talking about eggs, we're talking about veg tonight. The Food Standards Scotland inspection is very much it's every 2 years, and it's very much focusing on labelling and traceability. Again, if you're putting a label on something, um, it Food Standards Scotland are interested in what you're telling the consumer on your label, ready to eat. Whether you'll have a best before date for vegetables, I don't know. I think maybe it just depends. Um, and if you buy in produce that's ready to eat and you sell it on, the food standards may be interested in that. So that's if you have, 100 veg box scheme, 100 boxes veg box scheme, and you buy produce from Glasgow Market, for example, pop it in your veg box and sell it on packed and labeled. Food standards may be interested in that. If you don't pack and label it, they may not be. Um, I've done a thing called the traceability, the record keeping you need to do. It's all around traceability and labeling. I've talked about labeling. Traceability, you can adopt a batches and dispatches approach. So in a week, you have a batch of stuff that you harvest or buy in, and then your dispatch is where you sell it to. Now, that doesn't have to be detailed lists. It can be, 80% of product went to farm shops, 20% went to direct customers. And the HO shouldn't be interested in that, in the detail there. They're going to want to see evidence of that you have training, so a certificate of elementary food hygiene. You can do that online. And also, if you have any staff working in the business, then what they do, if they've had training. And then pest control, where there's food, there's pests, manage it and document that you're managing it. Trading standards are only get involved if you've put weights on labels and you're consistently wrong, as in under. They will come and find you sooner or later if someone makes a complaint that they get 80 grams of salad when you've promised them 125 grams. And they're interested in claims as well. So if you have organic on the label, you have to have a certification. So I was going to do a little budget, but I'm looking at my time and I'll just show it to you really quickly. Great. Okay, so this is just, if you look from left to right, this is just a very simple budget. I'm not going to work through it. Suffice to say, the box is in red. You can change, you can set this up yourself. The box is in red, change, and they'll change this number. So you drop to 60 boxes a week, things go wrong. If you get it up to 80, things look better. And these are your running costs, things that change depending on how much product you put out, your capital investment, and then your fixed costs of things that you can't change. And you can use this to interrogate it with, for an example question, how much labor does it take to grow enough vegetables to put into 75 veg boxes a week at £20 worth of vegetables? So that's just that piece there. Anyway, I'm going to go back to my presentation because I'm conscious of time. So share this one.
Would you be happy to share that little Excel sheet, Sascha, so that if people wanted to play about themselves, they could?
Definitely, absolutely. I think I'll attach that as a little Excel thing. So I just need to get my slideshow up. There we go. Right. So where are we? Budget. Oh yes, just quickly. You will get money to convert land under the Agriculture Environment Climate Scheme, and then you may be able to, if you're a croft, be able to apply for funding for the capital items, a polytunnel or some bits and pieces under the croft, the CAGs. I'm sorry, I can't.
Ag Crofting Agricultural Grant Scheme.
Thank you, Siobhan.
That's
Okay,
good.
so market research. What are we doing here? How do you know it's going to work? Well, do you think it'll work? Things to consider here, growing vegetables, and some of you will know this, you can't grow vegetables 365 days of the year. It's just not possible. So how are you going to manage your customers' desire for vegetables in December? What are you going to do about it? You may have to buy in. So there's something about continuity of supply there. And you may set it up as a different type of enterprise where your vegetable growing could be a place for training courses, or it could support it could be a social enterprise that supports other outcomes, social outcomes, a place for adults with learning support needs to have meaningful work, that kind of approach. Um, and and that can be the outcome, and the vegetables are the nice extra. Um, it could be an existing add-on to a current cafe that you have. Do you have a restaurant or cafe that really wants a good supply of local veg? That may be happening on Noida, it may not. I'm not sure. Seems that the remoter we go in Scotland, the poorer the provision of supermarket vegetables can be. So maybe it's different in your area, but um, so yeah, what's available in your local area? Can you identify outlets? Ask them if they want organic produce. Um, you can think that the world should eat organic, but not everyone believes that. Sometimes that's an important thing to remember. I got very unstuck with that at the very beginning of my journey. So develop a questionnaire, target a list of outlets, target a list of people, homeowners, go and talk to them, find producers to connect with as well, um, and go to farmers markets where the producers are, or the markets where the producers are, find a quiet time and ask them questions about how they do it. They will be helpful at that time. I've put in another couple of links in the chat here, in the presentation here to various box schemes, and then there's a farm advisory service link there as well. So you could also find local groups to go along to and ask them if, just they want to ask questions at the local mother and toddlers groups or the local play group. Just ask whether they think this is a good idea and what they would want to get from a box scheme type service. And then lastly, can you collaborate with others to grow things that they can't? So these are just four examples that I know of that are of successful businesses of varying ages. Pillars has been going in Falkland for over 40 years. It's one of the dark green type enterprises. Tom Nahar offers vegetables 26 weeks of the year, does training courses to supplement their income. Locavor is a business in an urban setting. It's in the middle of Glasgow. It runs shops and buys in quite a lot of product, but does grow a bit. And then here's a small farm with big dreams. I couldn't resist this. I think this actually probably encapsulates, they've developed a really strong messaging around wanting to actually do the right thing for the planet and for their local community, and they have big dreams. And I didn't give you their full script because it's quite personal. If you feel comfortable with that, go for it in your messaging. So tips to make it work. Think about your why. It'll help with sales, messaging. Focus on sales. It's really important. You got to get the money in the tin and network with others. Try and collaborate. Do a budget. Be realistic. And make your environmental health office life simple. A simple weekly record of ins and outs of batches and dispatches for traceability. Just keep it simple. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
That sounds easy, Sascha.
Uh, well, it's not an easy thing. I'll admit it. We tried many things in our business. Well, we'll come to that in the chat. Anyone got questions?
Somebody commented that Pillars is amazing. Pillars of Hercules. So,
They've been doing it a long time. They started
yeah,
off with 1 acre, and
yeah,
there's been a lot of shovelfuls of soil dug
Hmm.
in that
yeah.
business. Philip is agreeing. Yeah.
Colleen's saying they're one of the first sites to be certified.
Okay.
Okay. So, Colleen, do you want to go through the certification side for us?
Yes,
And
so I'll find the right bit
just
to share my screen.
while you're setting up, Carol has asked what happens if you have naturally peaty land. Now that's quite tricky. I don't know, Carol, if you watched our webinar with Audrey Littrick, but that would be worth going back to look at. And also, I will remember to put in links to some of the other online meetings that Audrey did when she was talking more about soil. Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite difficult. Lots of organic matter, but pH is going to
Low.
Mhm.
Yeah.
affect things a lot. Yeah. Okay, over to you,
Right.
Colleen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so hopefully this will sort of tie in nicely with some of what Sascha said, and kind of pick up on the kind of certification um, process and things to think about beforehand, and kind of what that could look like, reasons why you might want to certify, or things to consider if you're thinking about a certification, and sort of reasons for growing organically, what that means. And yeah, folk have questions, put your hand up, shout out, or we'll do more questions at the end. Um, and I'll try and keep my time quite tight as well, because I realise it's so easy. Like, I think me and Sascha could kind of talk about organic for hours and hours, so it's quite hard to keep it short. But anyway, what does organic mean to different people? It could, it means quite a broad kind of set of things, but it's based on principles of health, ecology, care, and fairness. When the sort of standards were first set up, they kind of based it around these principles, and then what does that look like in practice and on the ground for different kind of farm and growing types. And I'll go into the standards a little bit as well, but it's the kind of whole farm, whole system approach, as Sascha said already, with a big focus as well on soil health and fertility, kind of nourishing and building your soil, and health of everything else kind of comes from that. If you've not got healthy soil, then you will struggle with other things further along. Um, and just quickly picking up on the peat piece as well, not so much for having peaty soil, but for kind of propagation media. For example, Audrey Litterick might have mentioned it last week in her talk as well, that she's been part of an innovative farmers trial with us, which is through Soil Association, looking at how can farms, market gardens, crofts make their own propagation media that is free from peat, that has the right texture and the right water holding capacity. And so she's been doing a lot of work in that as well. Instead of buying in bags of um, sort of propagation media and sort of compost. Um, so that's a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down. But things, if you are certified or selling organic certified produce, things that you can say that is backed up by quite a lot of research are things like the things that make it attractive to consumers and people wanting to buy organic food is the fact that it's measurable that there's 30% more biodiversity usually on organic sites. If you have hens, for example, on your croft, it's got the highest standards of animal welfare. Soil carbon is often higher. Regen is kind of good at telling that story as well, but there's a lot of kind of evidence to back up the claims around soil and soil health. And the nutritional side as well, I think is quite important because there's the focus on soil health and soil microbiology, then that kind of filters through into the health of the crops and then the health of the people that eat those crops and your gut microbiome, and it's all linked. And as Lady Eve Balfour said, the health of soil, plant, and human is one and indivisible. So this is a photo from the 40s, maybe 1946. A group of kind of thinkers who were very well, did a lot of their own research into health. It kind of came from health, and then looking at soil health, animal health, plant health. Sort of started an association in 1946 when there was concerns about, that massively spiking use of artificial fertilizer, for example. And then I think it was in the early 1970s that then it went from being a sort of association of people with ideas and talking about the kind of principles, that then it started to translate into the standards and the kind of structure around certification. Um, so so that would have been 1973 if Soil Association certification has been around for 50 years last year. So why would people want to be certified as organic? And I think Sasha touched on it a few times in her slides about that, the factor of trust being quite a big factor especially if you're selling direct to people, being able to trust that label, and the Soil Association logo being quite well recognized amongst all of the other kind of brands and labels and everything. That trust bit comes into it quite a bit. And forgive all the text. I also have a few links to things which will get shared. I'll share these slides and I can, when we go into the discussion bit, I can paste them into the chat as well. But yeah, that sort of legally defined structure, the fact that it's sort of very stringently regulated and inspected, that gives people kind of confidence that they know everything's going to be, at least a minimum standard. Certifying with Soil Association in particular, because we have the certification body and the charity which are linked. My role's more on the charity side rather than certification, but it's very closely linked. So we do a lot of policy advocacy for the benefits of organic, trying to support the organic sector, participating in things that Sasha's also involved with, like developing a Scottish Organic Action Plan that would be sort of endorsed by Scottish Government to help structurally support organic in Scotland. And then we also have a lot of things like technical advice and support, supply chain support, resources and campaigns. We've just finished Organic September, uh, which apparently had gone down really well, where we have a lot of kind of marketing materials for anybody that has like a small farm shop up to the big brands, lots of different kind of materials and things that people can use to really amplify that message of organic. And leaflets to put in your veg box, for example, about benefits of organic food, for example. And I'll just kind of trot through it very quickly and not spend too much time, because we'll share the slides afterwards. But yeah, we try and provide a lot of additional support, and we have farmer and grower networks, for example, excuse me, um, to as in addition to the certification, to try and have that extra level of support for the sector as a whole. The fees, I'll touch on. I think we're probably one of the more expensive certification bodies, but I think I don't know by how much. If you have less than 5 hectares and you're a small scale farmer or grower, it's a discounted fee. If you have a much bigger estate or a big farm, it's sort of £1,000 or so, depending on your size of enterprise and stuff. But there's different sort of fee structures depending on your size. And I think it's in a slide later on, but worth saying here that there is financial support available through Scottish Government for conversion and maintenance, that is enough to cover your organic payments. Excuse me, at this rate. Excuse me, I've still got a bit of a cold. So it's the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, which is part of the sort of agriculture funding. And I think the windows usually open in the spring each year, to apply for that funding and tie that in with your conversion application if you're just newly converting. So I'll go into the process next. So it's worth, if you're thinking about converting your land and you know that the application window for the grant is going to be in spring, it's worth speaking to a certification body ahead of that, just so that you've kind of got all your ducks in a row to apply as soon as that window opens for the grant payment. But it's worth doing that grant application. So the process, this is a lot of text, don't read all of the text, but the first step is kind of give us a call, or whoever you might want to certify with, to talk through your situation, what your goals are. You can chat as well about, who your market might be. And they'll go through the kind of process, what you have to have in place beforehand, talk through the standards that are appropriate for your holding or business, and the grants and things like that. And then there's a bit of paperwork for the application, and then you get to meet your certification officer and have a visit. And that usually happens quite quickly once you've sort of started that process. And then after often 2 years, then you complete the conversion. So you'll be for 2 years. If you're selling produce, you can sell it as in conversion, but you can't yet use the organic label until you finish that conversion period. And yeah, as sort of part of that process, there's a lot of resources on the Soil Association website, again, that I'll link to through these slides, where you can look at all the different standards. There's conversion guides for all the different farming types, for livestock and non-livestock. So around the crops that you are going to grow, around seeds, where you get your seed from, a lot around soil health as well, with sort of advice on the practices. And I think there was one of the comments in the chat there was around sort of how difficult is it to convert, and it's kind of not straightforward to answer, because it depends what's your starting point just now, and what are you working towards. So if you're sort of very high input commercial, then it's going to be a lot further a journey than if you're already growing quite sort of sustainably and low input, for example, and weeds, crop management, and then there's a lot of information about the grants and learning networks as well. So I kind of keep reiterating that networks, learning from others, peer support groups. There's a lot of different networks out there, and I think that if you're not already sort of in touch or aware of other growers in your area, it's really worth kind of seeking people out or going to like Soil Association or Innovative Farmers websites to look at what networks there might be around you. Farm Advisory Service, Landmarkers Alliance, Organic Growers Alliance have quite strong networks with kind of resources and meetings and knowledge exchange and webinars and things that you can learn an awful lot from other growers. So I would recommend kind of seeking out networks and using those to kind of boost your knowledge and just that kind of peer support piece as well to know that you're not alone doing it. So I'll touch very briefly ways um, to sell. Sasha's kind of covered some of these already. Public sector procurement is one that we're, as Soil Association, we do a lot of work around the Food for Life programme and public sector procurement for food, excuse me, in schools particularly, and trying to work with growers and farmers to kind of feed into that. And then, you know, they're kind of long-term contracts with stable prices. And so it's maybe not a fit for some, but you know, might be worth looking at. But especially on a small scale, your kind of ideal scenario is short local supply chains. And it depends. I think that sort of market research piece is important. So looking at what is your local market, what exists already in terms of food sales, you know, what are other people, are there other growers around? Do they sell direct? Are there restaurants and cafes that you can be selling to? The CSA community supported agriculture model is quite a kind of popular one, and it's a very good way of connecting with your customers as well. So community supported agriculture is where people kind of buy a share in your crop and sign up for like a year, so that you know you've got that stable income. People know that they've signed up for veg boxes for however many weeks of the year. It might be 26 or 30 or you know whatever it might be, and that then sort of allows you to plan a lot better as well if people are buying in and they kind of feel a stronger connection sometimes to know that they're invested for a length of time into that. And then there's the sort of box schemes. There's some very good online platforms for doing box schemes, if people are interested in that. And then food hubs. There's a really nice example at Elphin, in the northwest, where there's maybe 5 or 6 crofters have set up a kind of food hub called the Green Bowl, and that's a sort of central point of food distribution. So people come and collect veg boxes and orders and things from this central point. So it means that they're not 6 of them aren't having to all go and do delivery separately. They just bring all of their food, you know, on set days of the week to this one place, and people come and pick it up from there. And I think it's created a really nice sense of community around that as well. Public sector procurement, yes, people, smaller scale producers kind of teaming together to work together. That was a project in Wales that worked really well. This slide kind of ties in with a new kind of theme of work for Soil Association called Organic for All. Excuse me, so this is an area of work where we're trying to put more kind of joining the dots across the organization, across all the lots of different things that we do, to kind of put a lot of time and effort into, you know, we know that organic food is healthy for you and good for the environment, but it has to be accessible to everybody, and it has to be accessible for the growers to grow it. You know, it has to be easy for people to grow organic food, and be supported to do that, and easy for people to access it to eat that food. So that it kind of ties in with that. And Sasha's mentioned some of these good examples of organic businesses. And I would say I think a lot of you in the audience are kind of in the Isles and West Coast. It might be a bit difficult to visit the ones that are on the East Coast and the Central Belt, but follow them on social media if you're over this way. Drop in and see them. Falkland Kitchen Garden and East Neuk Market Garden are within a couple of miles of each other in Fife, and I think they've recently formed a cooperative model to work together to share resources and labour, and kind of pool the resources and labour to kind of make it um, sort of more efficient for both of them, and I think that's working quite well. These all have links to their websites or case studies and things, so I won't go in detail into them. And again, that telling your story, telling your why, helping people to connect to your business and the produce that you're producing. Um, excuse me, some examples of how you might do that. And I'll not talk about this too much, but people buying organic, there was an organic market report out recently that had surveyed consumers. And I think the kind of bulk of consumers are um, younger, in the younger age bracket, and mostly on middle and low incomes rather than the higher income bracket. And so a lot of people are choosing to buy organic because of the lack of pesticides, higher animal welfare, um, because it's better for the soil and the environment. Um, and they were the sort of key reasons that people gave. And then tips for making it work. I think we're close to time, so you can. I'll not go into them all, but there's a few there, and you can read them when we share the slides afterwards. Um, but sort of things around, think about what crops you're going to sell that are high value, or can you add value to products to sell them. Um, Giving yourself some room to experiment, not splashing out on machinery or equipment straight away if you're just starting out. Look at your routes to market and think about your market, and learn from others who are doing it already. And I will stop sharing there. Um, and yeah, we've gone a wee bit over time, so I apologise, but we'll see what the questions are. And I suppose if anybody wants to stay an extra few minutes, if the discussion is quite um, detailed, then we can do that.
Thanks very much. We do have a few questions in. So the first one is to Sascha. Um, do I need to register with environmental health if selling veg in general, organic or not, just selling veg?
I think that was Claudia Marshall. I answered it. I answered it privately. I didn't answer it to everyone because anyway, um, it depends on the volume that you're selling and where you're selling it. If you're selling a little bit at your road end to passing customers through an honesty box or just a few close friends and family, no. Uh, if you're doing weekly dispatches of product that you're buying in from a market and selling it on and you're putting it labels on it and things like that, definitely yes. There's a bit of a grey area in between, if truth be told, and it requires a little bit of scrutiny of your of that document that what is the definition of local and what is the definition of working through the Food Standards Scotland checklist actually will help you identify that really clearly. And but don't worry, the EHOs and they want businesses to thrive, and that's the important thing. If you're doing something that they think should be on their radar, they'll kind of find you and they'll help you get they'll they'll make sure that you can keep trading. Yeah.
Good to know. And this question's for Colleen. If you have land for grazing, does the land area for the fees for becoming certified only apply to the area you go veg on, or the entire holding?
That's a good question. So you can convert part of your holding. If you have cattle grazing, for example, on the grass area, say you've got like 50 hectares or something, and you're grazing cattle on most of that, and you've got a couple of hectares for growing veg and crops, you could certify the crop area only, and not the rest. But then if you're sort of getting meat from your livestock, then you wouldn't be able to sell that meat as organic. So it depends, I guess, on your objectives. If you wanted your whole holding to be certified organic, then you would be I can share my screen again actually for the fee structure to just have a quick look at it. Um, let me know if that's coming up. Um, so yeah, if you're certifying less than 5 hectares, you get that reduced rate. But if you were certifying a bigger area, then the price goes up dependent on that hectareage of land. So it would be the same whether it's grazing or for crops, or if you've got, a mixed rotation across the whole thing, then you would be at the higher fee rate if you were um converting or certifying all of that land. And I just need to look for the stop sharing button. I
And
hope that answers it, but if not, put something more in the chat.
can you grow organic veg alongside conventional veg? So can you still be certified for growing the same product but in two different styles?
Um,
Is that question to Colleen or me?
Sorry, it's to clean.
That's fine.
that's okay. Well, you could chip in, Sasha, as well.
Okay.
I think probably the short answer is probably yes, but it's complicated and there's a lot of paperwork. So you'd have to have two separate um sets of records for everything, two separate land areas. If you were like on the bit that wasn't certified organic, if you were using chemicals on that, or even if you weren't using chemicals, the bit of ground that is not certified organic, you wouldn't be able to grow your organic veg on there and sell it as organic because the land that it grows in and the soil that it grows in has to be certified. So that maybe answers it, but you can, but it's I think a bit of a headache. There are a couple of companies that have done it, like in Inverness, I think, that have carrots and kind of field scale veg, and they have conventional and organic. But I think there's a lot of paperwork involved. So if it's at a small scale, it's maybe not worth it. I suppose it depends what your objectives are, whether you end up thinking it's worth it or not.
Okay. And again, Colleen, what would be the typical questions in a certification process?
Oh, excuse me. For horticulture, market gardening, crofting, with crops, I think there will be um a lot of questions around your soil management, like how you're managing it at the moment, what that looks like, and then sort of advice on how you will need to be managing it to become organic. And sort of questions, there's management plans, like crop management plans that you would need to do as part of the certification process, weed and pest control management plans. And I don't know because I'm not a sort of certification officer, so I haven't actually been through the process, and I probably should just so that I can answer these kind of questions. But there's a bit of kind of planning involved in how you're going to manage your soil, what crops are you going to grow, where are you going to get them from, because you need to buy organic certified seed, for example, how are you going to manage pests and diseases, so similar to like an integrated pest management plan. Um, and I think those would be the main ones. And then if you've got livestock, there's a lot of other things that go with that. But yeah, it would be sort of planning out and demonstrating how you're planning, how you're going to manage soil, crops, seeds, and inputs, things like manure as well. So it kind of gets you thinking and planning, like where would you get your manure from? Would you make it yourself? And where would things like that come from?
Mm.
But there's a
So,
lot of information on the Soil Association website, which is linked in the slides that we'll share.
okay. So how long would it typically take to put everything together to become organic? And maybe Sasha, you've been through the process, although it was a while ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Was it hell or
No, I think it sort of depends. It depends largely on your mindset, um, and your, the talking to the first question about growing conventional and organic crops alongside each other. That's not impossible. On a farm scale, it's much easier to do than potentially on a horticultural scale. You have to show evidence that you have separation. That's been my experience. We did do a little bit of contract butchery for people who were growing conventionally, and all we had to do was demonstrate separation. It was quite straightforward. Sometimes these things can be much scarier than actually, uh, you think. The the certification process, it takes you're 2 years in conversion, which is kind of like your 2 year ramp up time for getting your inspections correct. As soon as you say the word inspection, everyone goes, oh, and actually, it's really important that it should be a two-way process, and that the inspector, they're not going to tell you what to do, but they are going to support you to do the right thing because they want you to stay being certified. That is the
Hmm.
outcome that both certification bodies are seeking. They want you to be organic because that works for them. So,
Yeah.
um,
And we have
yeah,
certification
I think
officers at the end of the phone as well as the inspectors,
there you
and they're all lovely. They're really, they'll do as much hand holding as needed and as much reassurance as needed and give time. And so it's definitely not the case, from our sort of certification point of view, we're definitely not out to kind of, find holes in people's paperwork or anything. Like we're definitely there to support people through that process, um, and to kind of, do whatever people need to go through that process.
and certainly before you have an inspection, you should be sent a form with the questions that are going to be asked, and you'll get a bit of time to try and gather the bits and pieces of paper together. Yeah.
Okay. And how long does it typically take to convert? So you're saying you've got 2 years in conversion. Does it take some people longer for building up, I don't know, soil fertility, or can you take more than 2 years, or would you not want to? How does that aspect of it work? And indeed, can you sell as organic during the conversion period?
I'm going to
Colleen.
give a
Oh,
short, oh, Colleen, yeah.
no.
Oh, well, yeah, Sasha come in as well. Um, so yeah, I think I don't actually know the answer to that question about would it take longer than 2 years if you have a lot more work to do. I think potentially what might happen, um, but don't quote me on it, would be that when you have that initial conversation with a certification officer before you start the process, they will go through with you, where are you at just now? What are your practices? What, chemicals are you using and stuff. And might not start the process until you're kind of ready to start that 2 year conversion process. But I think if you're kind of, say in an arable context and kind of spraying with pesticides and things like that, you would stop doing that at the start of that 2 year conversion process. And then, after those 2 years, it's kind of moved through from the soil and you will have established your new systems and processes for managing your soil and your weeds and things like that. So yeah, I think 2 years is normally the case, but then if you've got a very different situation, it might be different. Sasha, what would you want to add on to that?
2 years. I don't think you can sell your product as organic when it's in conversion. Your vegetable
Yes, I
product,
forgot
you
that.
would need to check that. Um, yeah, that's as short
Yeah, I
as
think you
an
can
answer as I think.
say like on your website and stuff, we're in organic conversion, but you can't put the organic symbol on it until you've got your 2 year conversion finished and you've got your certification. So you can sort of put it in your messaging and let people know that you're in the process of converting. But um, yeah, you've got that kind of 2 year ramp up period, as Sasha said, before you can use that.
Okay. And using heritage seeds and open pollination, would the heritage
Um,
seeds have to be they'd have to be organic even though they were
yes,
heritage
so
seeds?
there is a wonderful new startup company. Well, I think they've been going a couple of years now, called Seeds of Scotland, which are certified organic. They're near Dingwall, I think, and they are producing vegetable and flower and other crop seeds of heritage varieties. So they don't have hundreds on their listing yet, but they're building up a catalogue of heritage variety fruit, veg, flowers, to sell so that people can grow heritage varieties. Um, Open pollinated, I'm not sure about, but I don't think so because it wouldn't be certified, but I'm not sure. I can maybe check and come back on that, when we share the slides or something. But um, I'm not too sure about open pollinated, but heritage seeds would still need to be certified. But look up Seeds of Scotland, and they have an ever expanding catalogue of some lovely crops.
Yeah. And on compost, must bought-in compost be organic? Yes.
Yes, there are a few suppliers of good organic compost, and you can. I suppose it depends if you've got other growers round about you. I know what some growers kind of in the Perthshire area do is kind of club together to buy half a pallet or something at a time together, or a pallet, to share out the shipping costs and stuff, because most of it comes from England, I think. But yes, it has to be organic compost, if it's bagged stuff. But there are a few good ones in the UK.
Okay. And related to compost then, what must your chickens be fed to use their manure? Do you have to have organic chickens to be able to use their manure?
Yes, and they need organic chicken feed as well. And I guess Sasha will be able to talk more about that.
Nothing really to add more that yes, organic poultry production is a whole nother area of expertise. And I could wax lyrical about that for a very long time, but I really won't. Um, Siobhan and I were chatting about it before we opened up the webinar this evening. Yeah, you need to, if you're using their manure, they have to be fed organic food and reared to organic standards. If you've got 6 hens scratching around, that's a bag of organic chicken feed every now and then. But if you have hundreds, that's a different thing.
Um, a last question from me is it worth it? What's the premium on organic veg? You have to pay for your certification, you've got to do all good things like build up soil fertility, but you don't have the arsenal of other weapons at your disposal, and it's harder work. So, if you're selling veg, which is already um, competitively priced, what's the uplift when you're selling as organic?
That's a really good question. I don't know the premium for organic vegetables. And when I look on the shelves in Tesco, I can usually see about a 20 pence extra on a pack of onions, for example. Um, the reality is the pack of onions may be slightly smaller. I would say across poultry, it's a third extra. I would imagine it will be similar for veg, maybe even more, up to double. What do you get back? You get to eat vegetables with no pesticides, and that can be a really strong driver for people. Um, what else do you get? Well, you get all the lovely things that we talked about, but yeah, that's the uplift in premium. Is it worth it? You'll find yourself with a very reliable, and if you provide a good product and service, you'll find yourself with a really reliable and loyal customer base, which can be a very life enriching thing. I know we shouldn't talk about emotion in business, but actually it is important when your customers tell you how delicious your produce is and how much they enjoy it and how it makes them feel better and things like that, then that's a very, very, very positive feedback. But yes, the money is important, and I think it could be up to double.
I think those are good sentiments to end on. So thank you very much, Sascha. Thank you very much, Colleen. And thank you to all of you for joining us this evening and spending your time with us and asking such excellent questions. If you haven't had a chance to put in a question, do please email, and we'll be sending out a survey afterwards just to ask you what you thought. And please, on the survey, if you would like to look at other things, other aspects, then let us know and we will endeavour to put them on. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Good night, all.
Thanks for having
Thanks for
us.
coming. Bye
Thanks,
just now.
everyone. Yeah.
Good luck.